Introduction. Hello children, let us take up for discussion a topic closely related to our daily life. Your mother prepares poha for you and spices it up with green chilies. And you simply don't like green chilies. What will you do? Obviously, you will carefully pick out every piece of chili before popping some poha into your mouth. A similar exercise is done by your mother when she is preparing to cook food for the family. You must have noticed her separating stones and other unwanted particles from rice, wheat, and pulses before cooking them. Though some impurities and undesirable particles can be removed by hand picking, it may not always be the case. In many mixtures, components are not easily separable. In such cases, some other techniques of separation are used. We will discuss the different methods of separation of substances in this lesson. Most of the things that we use in our daily life are in the form of mixtures. Not every component of a mixture is useful. For example, some food preparations may contain a constituent that is not liked by us. We remove it to make the food item suit our taste. So, one reason for separation is removal of undesirable components. Similarly, we find stones, mites, etc. in rice, wheat, pulses, etc. We remove them before cooking because they are harmful to our body. So, the second reason for separation is removal of harmful components. When we churn milk, curd, we get two different but extremely useful products, butter and buttermilk. Thus, the third reason for separating the components of a mixture is to obtain pure and useful components. You sure would have some idea about the methods of separation. In fact, you would have used some of these methods in your day-to-day life. Let us list some methods commonly used to separate the components of a mixture. Hand picking, churning, threshing, winnowing, sieving. The basis for choosing a method of separation depends upon the physical properties of components. How does your mother separate small pieces of stones and other impurities from wheat, rice, and pulses? Yes, simply by picking them up by hand, one by one. The method of hand picking can be used for separating impurities that are easily visible to the naked eye and are present in small quantity in the form of dirt, husk, and stone. This is butter. Do you know how butter is made? When milk is stirred vigorously in a churn, butter is obtained. What liquid left behind is the tasty, nutritive buttermilk that is relished by many as a refreshing summer drink. Do you see that two useful components emerge from a mixture when this method of separation is employed? You must have seen bundles of wheat or paddy stalks lying in fields after harvest. Have you pondered how a farmer separates the grains from these stalks? Once the wheat or paddy crop is harvested, the farmer ties the stalks together to form bundles. He then leaves the bundles to dry in the sun. Once the stalks are completely dried, the farmer beats them against a hard floor to free the grains. This process of separating grains from stalks is known as threshing. Bullocks, oxen, and machines known as threshers are also used for this purpose. During your numerous train trips down your countryside, you would have noticed women standing at a height, shaking a basket held over their heads continuously. They are separating the grain from the husk by simply allowing the wind to blow away the husk and other lighter impurities. The heavier grain falls down on the ground in a heap. This process of separating impurities from the grain by allowing a current of air to blow away the lighter impurities is known as winnowing. Children, have you seen how your mother removes bran and other impurities from flour? They separate the coarse bran from the fine flour with the help of a sieve. This technique of using a sieve to separate the solid components of different sizes in a mixture is known as sieving. In this method, the mixture is placed on the sieve and shaken. The smaller particles pass through the holes of the sieve to the container placed below and are thus separated from the bigger particles that are retained in the sieve. After heavy rain, the potholes were filled with muddy water. Jack, a 12-year-old inquisitive boy, tried separating the mud from water. Let us see, did he succeed in his project of getting clean water? Jack filled a beaker with muddy water and left it undisturbed for some time. After some time, he was surprised to see the beaker. Let us also look to find the reason for his surprise. The beaker had clear water. Mud, being heavy, had settled down at the bottom of the beaker, while the water formed the upper layer. This process of deposition of mud at the bottom of beaker is called sedimentation, and the layer of mud is called the sediment. Jack separated the upper layer of water from the mixture by gently pouring the clear water into another beaker without disturbing the sediment. This process of separation of a liquid from the sediment is called decantation. Similarly, there are other separation methods too. Let us discover them in this module. Children, after preparing tea, this tea stall owner pours the mixture into the tea strainer. The tea passes through the holes of tea strainer, leaving behind the tea leaves in it. This process of separation is known as filtration. Filtration, however, cannot remove the solid substances dissolved in a liquid. Sometimes fine particles of the solid component pass through the strainer that is used as the medium for filtration. In such a situation, filter paper is used. A filter paper is a special paper which has millions of tiny holes in it. While the liquid can pass through these holes, the solid particles remain on the filter paper. The liquid which passes through the filter paper is called the filtrate. The solid particles that are left behind the filter paper are called the residue. Let us do a workout. If you are given a mixture containing water, sand and salt, how will you separate the three components from one another? You will leave the mixture undisturbed for a while to separate sand. Sand, which is heavy and insoluble in water, settles down at the bottom of container. The mixture is then separated by decantation to get sand. Now, as salt, being soluble, is completely dissolved in water. This is done through evaporation and condensation. Let us look what we mean by these two terms. When we have a mixture of salt in water to separate, we take the solution in a kettle and cover it with a lid. Now gently heat the kettle for some time. Heating transforms water into vapor that escapes from the spout of kettle. Continue heating till all the water gets converted into vapor and only salt is left behind in the kettle. Thus, salt dissolved in water can be separated from the water through this process. This process of conversion of water into vapor by heating is called evaporation. In order to obtain the water while heating the salt water, hold a plate containing ice just above the spout of the kettle. When the steam escaping through the spout comes in contact with the plate containing ice, it condenses and forms water. This process gives us back the water. This process of conversion of water vapor into water is called condensation. Water is a universal solvent. It dissolves many things. but there are certain items that do not dissolve in water. Collect sand, milk, lemon juice and wax. Also take some sugar and salt. Try to dissolve these materials in water separately. Make a table of your observations. Compare your observation table with the table shown on screen. Let us now do another workout. Take a beaker and dissolve some amount of salt in it. Go on adding salt to the solution. As long as the salt is dissolved in water, the solution is an unsaturated solution. But a stage will soon come when you will not be able to dissolve more salt in the solution. At this stage, the solution becomes saturated. Thus, a solution is said to be saturated if it cannot dissolve any more quantity of the given substance in it. Add a small quantity of salt to a saturated solution and heat it. What happens to the undissolved salt at the bottom of the beaker? Yes, it starts dissolving in the solution. Let this hot solution cool. Does the salt reappear to settle at the bottom of the beaker again? Yes, it does. Students, this activity shows that you can dissolve a large quantity of salt in water by heating. Summary. Let us summarize what we have learned. The separation of the components of a mixture is done to remove undesirable and harmful components and to obtain pure and useful components. Some common methods of separation of the components of a mixture are hand-picking, threshing, winnowing, and sieving. Hand-picking is the method used to separate impurities visible to the naked eye and present in small quantity. Churning refers to the process of agitating or stirring milk or curd to make butter. Threshing is the process of separating grains from stalks. Winnowing is the method of separating the husk from grains by allowing air through the mixture. Sieving is the technique of using a sieve to separate solid particles of varying sizes. Sedimentation is the process by which the insoluble heavy particles in a liquid are allowed to settle down. Decantation is the process by which a clear liquid obtained after sedimentation is transferred into another container without disturbing the settled particles. Filtration is the process of separating an insoluble solid component of a mixture from its liquid component by passing the mixture through a filter. The process of conversion of water into vapor by heating is called evaporation. The process of conversion of water vapor into water is called condensation. A solution which can dissolve more quantity of a given substance in it is called an unsaturated solution, whereas a solution which cannot do so is said to be saturated.